It's good to be home. This is where Grant Williams in the building.
What up, G?
How you doing? I got to stay up here to hit you right. It's really good to be home. Coming to UNC Charlotte changed my life.
How?
It opened up worlds for me. I mean, I grew up in the projects, right, in Inglewood, California, and then moved to rural North Carolina, Advance, which is outside of Mocksville, which is outside of Winston-Salem. And lived in a single wide trailer with my pops. And I came here and saw what I could be. And then I got an opportunity to lead, to grow, to be with friends, to roll with people that really supported me and gave me guidance and wisdom. And this built the foundation for everything that happened after that. And so I'm so grateful always to UNC Charlotte. So can we just give some love for this? And I think some of you know the journey and we're going to talk about our journeys that I've gone through from our family's mental health and how it changed the course of my life. And as we talk to students about what they truly need, that topic is a critical one. And as we think about resiliency, and so when I thought about who was the single best person to bring on this campus, it's you.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
Can I just tell you guys, this isn't going to be one of these situations where it's going to be D and I up here pontificating the whole time. It's going to be very interactive. We're going to engage you. We're going to want your feedback. We're going to want your questions. We're going to want your thoughts on things. And I've had a pretty crazy journey in this life. I'm only 42 years old, but sometimes I feel like I'm a lot older because of my experiences and the people I've been able to be around. I have to tell y'all, you meet people that you perceive to be so different. And sometimes, G, I know you know this, like in our world, you then meet those people and almost you're kind of let down. Like, well, I thought you were going to be so different, so much more thoughtful and intentful in how you move and how you engage people, with how you articulate your opinions about things. And when I met Damon, I was blown away. First off, I felt like I had known this man for 25 years. And also, we were talking last night. I think one of the things that's great about where he is and where I am and where I'm trying to go is that when you're able to be your true, authentic self around somebody, like your real, authentic self in a world where people constantly have their phones out, where people are trying to give off the perception of who they want to be in the world, you can meet somebody and create a barometer where you can ask real questions because you know the place you're getting that feedback from is sincere. And I just want to say, I'm blown away by this. Your picture out front is incredible, but just creating an environment conducive to learning and sharing and transparency and vulnerability. I commend you for that. And I thrive to do the same. So I just wanted to state that off the top.
Thank you, bro. Thank you. So I think we get into it. There's a number of questions that have already been submitted. I think there's also a QR code that's available. You have to be off of the Wi-Fi in the building in order to submit the question. Don't ask me why that's the case, but that's what I was told. So I'm giving you that flow. But I think it's really important. Your life journey is one of an extraordinary example in a variety of ways. And we don't have enough time for each of us to tell every aspect of everything that we've done. But just give us the tidbits of sort of you transitioning from high school to being someone who literally changed the college basketball game, and how that affected you and who you are, and then we'll jump from there.
Well, I think at first I had identity crisis growing up. You know, it was almost as if, like, as a player, back then I was a little bit ashamed to talk about that my father worked at American Express and that my mother was a guidance counselor, went back to school, received multiple master degrees, because that was being privileged in the area that I grew up in. But I went to a school that was predominantly Caucasian, but the town I grew up in was predominantly Black. So I really struggled with, what does it mean to be a Black man? We were talking about this in the back. Like, my dad would take me to tennis matches, would take me to squash matches, right? And I'm like, oh, I'm the only one here looking the way we look. And he's like, no, but you deserve to be here. You know, and it's okay for you to be here. This is being Black too. This is being cultured. This is being experienced. This is learning the vernacular of how they speak about certain events. And it's about knowledge. And my dad put me onto that game early in my life, but going to Duke just heightened it to another level, because at that time, you know, Jalen Rose and I are good friends, you know, and Grant Hill is somebody I look up to. We talk about Grant. And, you know, going there kind of thrusted me into this world where it's like, oh, Jay Williams, he's an Uncle Tom within the Black community. And that was always so hurtful for me, because I really wanted to be an executive. Like, I love the basketball. And Coach K obviously took basketball to another level for me when I really engaged in it. But I wanted to be a businessman more than anything. And I loved the platform that basketball gave me. And Coach K was brilliant at, you know, first day on campus, all the players are together. And, you know, we had all these different executives that came down for these fantasy camps, guys that would pay thousands of dollars literally to live in our dorms and to, you know, work out with us and stuff. And, you know, Kay's like, what are you doing over here? I'm like, what do you mean? I'm just talking to Carlos Boozer and Mike Dunleavy, all my teammates. And he's like, how come you're not over there? He's like, all those, you know, executives, all those VCs, all those private equity members, they want to do what you do. You want to do what they do. Why are you not building a bridge? So for me, he put me on game like that, to think that way at an earlier age. And then obviously going there, not going home throughout the off seasons, really just overloading in school, training. Next thing I know, my game just catapulted, because I was putting in, you know, we were talking about Malcolm Gladwell last night, 20 hours, right? Like
20,000 hours.
Putting in that time to be a specialized talent. Next thing I know, you know, I was on pace to graduate school in 3 years. They said I could have been the first pick my sophomore year. I chose to stay in school. Thought I was going to be the first pick my junior year, but
Yao Ming.
God descended a 7'6" person among me that year. A lot of them out there.
It was coordinated.
Exactly. Coordinated attack, as I call it. And then I went into the league, and going into the league was an eye-opening experience. I always had structure when I was in college. And then all of a sudden now I had freedom, and I had fame, and I had status. And, you know, they always say that ego stands for edging God out. I had an ego.
Yeah.
And I think my ego ultimately led to me hitting a utility pole on my motorcycle after my rookie year, going 70 miles an hour. And literally, you talk about one day you're on the billboard of I-90, having Michael Jordan's locker, being the first Chicago Bull to have a triple-double since Michael Jordan, thinking that you're starting to figure out this league from a guard perspective, to the next day, not knowing if you're ever going to be able to walk again.
So I think that's just, you know, maybe not everybody can identify with being an NBA superstar, but there's plenty of people that are on a journey.
Yes.
And then the thing that they've worked for a long time, and for you, was all of your life. The next day, you wake up after that motorcycle accident, and that's taken away from you. How do you deal with that moment? How did you deal with that moment?
I mean, that led to ultimately 2 attempts at suicide that were unsuccessful. It's let me ask you a question. So when you meet somebody for the first time, what are the typical questions you ask them when you meet somebody for the first time? Especially like when you go to a lot of events, like,
where are you from? What do you do?
Boom, right? So second one for you. Typically for a lot of people, what do you do?
Yeah.
So there's a natural association with what you do and who you are.
Yeah.
So for me at that time, that was who I was. I was what I did. I didn't really take any time to think about who I wanted to be. When did that moment happen for you? Right, because we were talking about this last night at dinner. I think a lot of me gets lost on the climb, the chase, that sometimes you're so busy looking up, you don't really look down to see how far you've even came and acknowledge that.
Yeah.
Did you have an inflection point?
I mean, for me, a lot of that happened here. But there's levels to it. But here, there was a moment probably around like my junior-ish year where I felt like I could do something much greater if I just worked hard, if I just associated myself with the right people, if I just, kept the momentum that I had going, that something very different than what had ever happened in my family. And I held on to that belief.
Was it like an aha moment? Or how'd you come to that realization?
When after being student body president and sort of being encouraged by the people here, Dr. Herman Thomas, this brother is he ran started the Utah program here on campus. And he would just tell me like, yo, you got something special. And you hear that enough, you start to believe it. Now the problem is if you overbelieve that, right? Yeah. And that ego grows and it becomes more about you than the journey and the mission and the work. That's when things change.
When did you start? Because I think I learned, I told this great Kobe Bryant story one time where I was coming we were playing the Lakers for the first time. And I came to the gym earlier because, being a pro, it was like, I really looked forward to all these matchups, right? Like I was going against AI, Jason Kidd, all these people that you dream of. And this is Kobe, Shaq in their prime, okay? I'm like, I'm trying to give Kobe 50 tonight. Now, I know the chances of it happening are probably slim, but in my brain, I already believe I can do that, right? Yeah. So I come to the gym to work out early at the Staples Center. I'm getting up shots up the games at around 7. Again, they're like around 2:33 with all of our managers to work out. And I walk into the gym and this dude's already in there in a dead sweat. I'm like, damn, he's already here. And then I work out, I watch him, I work out for a little bit. And then by the time I'm done, he's still going, right? And I put on my shoes, I'm like, okay. And Kobe and I always had a little bit of a relationship because he was close to Coach K and Duke and things of that sort. And that game, I'm going to save y'all the story. He just destroyed us. And it's fine, even though I'm still mad about it today.
Yeah, no, I saw the game.
And and it's Kobe, right? He's destroyed a lot of people. But I remember, like in this effort to seek more knowledge, I was like, I'm gonna go ask him after the game, like, Kobe, why did you stay afterwards to work out? And it was like the smallest thing. He was like, oh, because I saw you walk in the gym, I saw you work out. And I wanted you to know, no matter how hard you worked out, you're never gonna outwork me.
Yes.
Such a small seed, right? Like that's such a small seed.
Yeah.
But I think it was the first time I learned at that moment, you have to fall in love with the process of work. You have to love it. You have to not think about it as work. It's just, this is what I have to put in order to get something out. And obviously you were able to do that here where a lot of people will come here and like, oh, that's great, I'm here. But you made the most out of it. When did that moment happen for you where you started to work it and take advantage of it?
Look, I think, I was fortunate how many people here actually go to their professors and ask for their guidance? You all sit in classes, but how many go to your professors and ask for guidance? Right? You see how rare that is from a hand raise standpoint. They're getting a competitive advantage relative to you, right? Because the wisdom that you seek from others that have already traveled the journey makes you better on the journey, right? And I was fortunate to stumble into that because I had early mentors that sort of gave me that. I want to take a break from us talking and let's take 2 questions and then we'll come back to the talking. Sure. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We want to keep y'all in the flow. Who's got a question?
Here's a question over here.
Oh, thank you. I'd just like to know, when did you meet Karen Pop, and how did that really change your life? Because it seems like that was a very important moment from what I've read.
Yeah.
And by the way, Jay, I went to high school with Johnny Dawkins back in the 90s.
So we're sitting in the Pop Martin Student Union. I met Karen Pop my senior year here. And she's a former student body president. I was a former student body president. We got invited to this thing together, and it was literally a throwaway comment in the conversation where I already had a job after graduation. But I said, hey, Karen, really great to meet you. She had come on campus to give a speech. She was working at the White House at the time. I was like, hear great things about, working at the White House. I know there's a White House internship program. Is there anything I could do there for the summer? Mm-hmm. It was literally one of the last things I said to her in that interaction. And she was like, sure, kid, send me your resume. And she ended up getting me into the White House internship program, even though it was already closed. I go there, I'm an accounting major. Most people were political science. I'm building spreadsheets, working for Al Gore's finance manager. And then they noticed me, right? I was putting in the work. I was staying late. And they noticed me, and then I got an opportunity to interview for a full-time position, which was working for the White House Chief of Staff. And that changed my life because that experience, right, put me in the West Wing, with like all the world leaders. I'm going to state dinners. I'm flying on Air Force One. I get this extraordinary exposure. And that experience was helpful in my application to Harvard Business School, right? All those things built on top of each other. But had I not asked that one question, my pathway is very different.
Isn't it funny too, though? I feel like I do a lot of conferences and stuff. And, for all the people that just raised their hand before about asking your teachers for extra work, I always find it pretty shocking that because I'm an accessible guy, right? Like I don't walk around with security. Right. I'll shake anybody's hand, what's going on, listen to your story. The people that don't ask me for like, hey, help me.
Right.
And then follow up on that. It's almost like I want to help people, but people's unwillingness to ask.
When did you learn how to ask for help? Like, and how? Because you've grown up like as an athlete, as an elite athlete, right? There's that Superman mentality where you dominate. This is my house, right? Is sort of the thought process that elite athletes have. Like, when did you actually learn the vulnerability to ask for help?
Well, I think I learned about it earlier through like just watching tape and things, because you're like, why did this set happen this way? I think I really learned it at the next level when I went to college. And I give Coach K a lot of credit for this. That same moment that I just talked about between executives wanting to be athletes, and then I was an athlete that wanted to be an executive. Yeah. My dad and Coach K, they devised a plan where I would send handwritten letters to people that I admired and then invite them to Duke games. And I was almost shocked, like the amount of responses I got from some pretty significant people. Like, people don't know the name as much, but like Eddie Q is second behind Tim Cook over at Apple. And Eddie Q is a huge Duke basketball fan. And next thing you know, Eddie Q and I are building this relationship because I want to ask him so many questions about the businesses that they're building, and also how he's, when I hear you talk about who you surround yourself with, like you're the sum of the 5 people you surround yourself with the most, like how he went through that vetting process. I didn't know how to do that as an athlete. I was still hanging around the people that I grew up from the block with.
Yeah.
And how to say no to them. So I think learning how to then ask for, how did you think about things? I think I created, like, I was investing in them, and then I wanted them to invest in me as a person, as a human being. And I never really asked them for it. Was it hard for you not asking for stuff?
I don't like asking anybody for anything. But I had to, I was humbled by it, right? And there's been moments. So, we went through a horrible mental health crisis in our family. And my wife, with great wisdom, said to me, we have to tell our friends and family that we're going through this. And it was my inclination, right, to be like, no, well, like, we got this. But the reality is, we oftentimes treat mental health and mental illness as if we did, cancer in the 1940s. It's like a scarlet letter, and folks don't talk about it, and then you have shame around it, and what ends up happening is everybody suffers. But if you were actually open and vulnerable to the people in your life that love you and care for you, and the professionals that can be helpful, you can actually treat mental illness and have effective outcomes. And I didn't fully embrace that and understand it until like some real coaching from Kia, right? And it was the single best thing that we could have done, because it helped our family work through what was the most difficult thing I've ever experienced in my life.
I know as an athlete, it's funny, if I wanted to work on my shot, Jay, go see a shot doctor. If I want to be better at school, Jay, here's an academic advisor, here's a tutor that can help you with that particular class. But when it came to anything mentally, it was like, I don't need to see anybody, I can fight through it. You can't just fight through life by yourself.
No.
You got to fight through with the team. Who's on your team?
Right.
It's important.
Let's get another question from the crowd.
So thank you all both for sharing your stories. I know that vulnerability is challenging for everyone. Nobody wakes up and says, today's a good day to be vulnerable. So I just really appreciate that. I'm a therapist. I also teach here on campus. I appreciate the shout out to folks, students, to seek out your professors, because we're not scary folks, and we definitely want to make sure that we guide. And also for me, like, I'm looking for somebody to step into where I am, because I'm not going to be doing this for a long time. So we need good folks to be in our positions. My question is, what kind of advice or what kind of guidance would you tell young folks or anybody in here who is going through a funk and is possibly contemplating suicide? Because suicide rates among young folks has been on a rise, and there's a stigma about saying I need help, and it's okay to say I'm not okay. So what kind of advice would you give folks in this space who are in that funk, in that, contemplating some things that they feel like they're alone?
Jay, take a shot at it.
Go ahead, please.
So, like I said, I had 2 attempts at it. The first was I was in the hospital for 2.5 months. I dislocated my knee. If you see when I walk, I still have drop foot with my left foot. I can't pick my left toe up. I often joke with my wife that I know what it's like to have a baby, because my pubic symphysis split open 15 inches. And I did not have any functionality down that way for multiple years, which is one of the most humbling experiences of my life. Didn't know if I was gonna be able to have kids. And I was still surrounded by so much medical care at that time that, I was still so frail. At that time I tried to slit my wrist with a pair of scissors, but I was only about 95 pounds. Like I'm 205 pounds. Like that's my plain weight. Like that's what I am right now. So as you can imagine, I was emaciated, frail. The second time I got addicted to Oxycodone and Oxycontin because when I dislocated my knee, my peroneal nerve, which is what ultimately gives me drop foot, kind of slung like a cord and coiled up in the bottom of my leg. So it coiled from up here. So it said it takes about 1 inch per month for your nerve to heal. And nerve regeneration is like childbirth or somebody stabbing you with a dull knife. So going through it, and it would come sometimes for 20 seconds. Sometimes it would last for an hour and a half. So I naturally got addicted to my medication because I didn't know when it was going to come. And as I got out of it a couple of years later, out of like going to therapy and learn how to walk again and wearing AFO, one of my biggest challenges was, as a former athlete, I was so used to people looking at me and being in awe of what I had been able to accomplish, that seeing that look transition from awe to sorrow to pity and was earth-shattering for me. Because when you're having a hard time dealing with something, and then now I have to absorb your energy and how you're dealing with it, it was painful for me. And I think, sorry if I'm being long-winded, I'm just trying to give you context.
No, this is important.
I think, people would say things to me like, yo, Jay, well, you really hurt me. Man, it broke me. Like, or, man, you messed it all up. You had it. And people would say things not to maliciously hurt me. I think just to almost like, they didn't know what to say. So it was like their way of bridging. And I mean, one night I tried to overdose and tried to drink and a lot. And I came out of that, and I've been seeing somebody, talking to somebody. And my dad saved my life. He said something to me that I had to practically work on it daily. And I still do it to this day. Depression isn't something that just leaves. It's like somebody going through AA. Like, you have to address it. And I think you have to build your muscles around it, mentally, psychologically, daily, to stay strong, to keep persevering. And my dad and I were talking, and I was coming out of this really bad funk. And I was telling him all the things I had lost. Right? Like, I lost the opportunity to create generational wealth. I lost the opportunity for this platform. I prepared my whole life not to be the dumb jock, and here I was that did something in a dumb jock manner. And my dad said, you know what? You got to start focusing on what you've gained instead of what you've lost. And I started actually writing down all the things. I was like, hold on, let me actually think about that. Like, what did I gain? Like, damn, I gained the second chance at life. Like, I'm here. Okay. I gained an opportunity. I could have a family one day.
Yeah.
I can be a husband one day. I can work with people. I can give back. I can still play this game of basketball. It may not be what everybody else thought it was going to be for me, but I can still participate, and I still have so much to give. I started, and it massively outweighed what I had thought I had lost. And
It's like a gratitude journal.
yes.
Yes.
And it was funny because then when you start learning how to, Coach K will always talk about this, and I have a lot of sports analogies, but sometimes, like in the game of basketball, you turn the ball over 3 or 4 times, I would come into the huddle, he'd be like, pick your head up. I'm like, what's wrong? He'd be like, why are you focusing on focus on, you're being selfish when you do that. You're focusing on yourself. You're not focusing on your team.
Yes.
And I learned that as a younger player, right? And all of a sudden I found that very relatable. Like, okay, I'm focused on all these things. And when people would say things like, oh, you really hurt me, or man, you lost so much, I'd be like, but do you know how much I've gained? And you would see people almost like, wait, what? You gained something from this? It was like, I was almost like, while I was recalibrating other people, I was recalibrating myself.
Yeah.
To focus on it. Yeah.
I would say that the other thing, piece of advice that I've gained from living through this with my family, is when you're in these depressive modes, one of the first things that I typically have seen is isolation. And just the act of getting out and being with people is one of the best ways to build resiliency, is one of the best ways to, community is such a key aspect, and friendship is such a key aspect of joy in people's lives. And when you have friends that have a common anything, like we could have an interest in basketball, or we could have an interest in chess, or we can have an interest in golf, and then getting out and doing things with friends around the things that you enjoy, you'll be surprised by how that will lift your depressive states, and just having and being in community. We're doing with WellWithAll, some studies on longevity, and one of the key aspects of people that have lived long, healthy lives, not just like dragged along their lives, but lived, mentally sound, long lives, are folks that have good community, that have friendships that are endearing, that surround themselves with people that are not transactional, that are not just about fun, but people that you actually connect with in life on a deeper level. Because And one of the best ways, and if you're like, I don't have any friends, well, go join a club, right? Go get engaged in something. One of the best ways to create connection is to work with people on a project, and that work together and the engagement together on anything creates connection. And so seeking out connectivity, and there's this thing in therapy called opposite action. So if you want to stay in bed all day long, you want to skip class, you want to just be by yourself, one of the things that I would tell you is just like, I'm going to do the opposite of that right now. I'm going to go outside. I'm going to be with somebody. I'm going to sit in the quad. Anybody know how to play spades in here? Y'all know a little something about that? I used
Better see a lot more hands.
No, but like finding something to be engaged with good people. I see the alphas in the building. What's up, Brad? Like that community for me. Yeah,
I'm a
you know what it is.
fine.
That community for me on campus. That brotherhood, when I didn't want to go out, like there was always somebody like, nah, bro, come on, let's go. And having that aspect in your life in some way is super important. But there's many others, and seeing this brother right here, and getting his wisdom and guidance, and the other talented folks that are on campus to be supportive, seeking out that help, and understanding that it exists here on campus is a really important thing.
And also, I think it's becoming way more normalized now, which is like, thank goodness. Like when I start talking to people, everybody's dealing with something in life to some degrees. Like I remember when I was at work and I was away and I had my son, my second child, and one of my bosses, and it's funny when you start going through this, I was like, man, like I was with my wife when we had my son, and then I had to go away. And I wanted to take pat leave, right? And they're like, well, you didn't have the baby. And I was like, so now you're gonna try to minimize me wanting to spend time with my son? Do you know how many times I thought about being a Black father, how I wanted to be available for my children? Like that's what we're gonna do now? So I think sometimes it's also recognizing that a lot of people are going through things, and you have to be willing and unafraid to use your voice to tell them what's going on. Because when you're quiet, everybody kind of thinks about themselves and what they have to do, and people just start moving. And if you can't voice or try to, or at least say things to your friends so your friends can allow them to know what's going on in your life, people will help you naturally if they know what's going on.
Yeah. How many people here see a therapist? Right? And so I'm raising my hand because I actually see a therapist, right? And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That is, I'm ensuring that I'm a healthy father. I'm ensuring that I'm a healthy husband. I'm ensuring that I'm a healthy business person by getting help and resources to engage around my own mental health, right? And if you're struggling with mental health, that is a point of humanity. That is not a point of weakness. Amen?
Amen. Amen.
Let's please take a couple more questions from the crowd. Lori, you got somebody? Let's get a student up in here. What we got?
Oh, we got one right here. Yep.
So Mr. Williams, how did it feel, or
You can call me Jay, man.
oh, cool.
What are we looking for?
I ain't there yet.
Oh, gotcha.
I ain't there yet.
Oh, yeah. So I wanted to know, how did transitioning from a player to an analyst affect you mentally?
It's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that before. I think at first it was really hard because I was jealous. And I don't care what anybody says, like whatever state of mind you're in, that translates through what you do. Like, especially when you have to speak ad nauseum at times. Tidbits come out here and there. And I don't think I was equipped with the tools to really recognize how it was affecting me psychologically, because I was very still focused on, I wanted to, like, I would watch guys on the court, like, and it was affecting my analyst work. It was like, man, they gave that dude $70 million.
Right. What's up with that?
You know what I mean? Like, he only averaging like 11. That's $70 million. What's going on? And I think there was, but I don't think that it was never towards them. It was more resentfulness towards myself. And I think that took a lot of therapeutic work to work through that in real time. I think one of the biggest adjustments for me was, because I know the game, I love the game. Like, speaking to coaches, I can, explain the game in a different way, but it was also learning how to not let other people's opinions in this world we live in, of aggregating of opinions 24/7, and always reading through the comments, reading through the chats, reading through the hurtful things. Like, people would say to me, like, and it used to really, I'm not gonna curse, jack me up, that when I would give an astute opinion, like, hey, Bron did this, and I'm like, Coach K, did you see that? He's like, I saw it. I'm like, okay, Coach K saw it. Phil Jackson, did you see it? I saw it, Jay. And then I would go on air, I'm like, this is what I saw. And then people would say, oh, it's probably because you hit your head so hard in that motorcycle accident. Or, what an idiot, you should have passed away. Or, God forbid, you have a human mistake, you make a mistake, and you just start reading through all these comments. And I had to learn that world is not real. It's not who I am. It's like, I went through a situation with KD, because KD and I were working together, and there really we didn't draw boundaries. And I told this story that I thought was very reflective of him being like Michael Jordan. And it probably crossed a little bit of a line. And that's always, it's always hard, like, when you have relationships, because especially in my industry, it's about storytelling. So I told the story about how KD didn't want to really be compared to anybody. And, KD responded by not texting me or calling me, but, he got hit randomly during a post interview and caught at the wrong time emotionally for him. And he was like, man, Jay's a effing liar. And then, like, the headlines the next day was like, Jay Williams is a effing liar. And then I had this whole slew of people that all of a sudden started to challenge everything I said. And I was faced with this thing, like, all right, like, do I engage in this tit for tat with this other man that I admire? Like, we can critique the game, but I don't try to critique people. So I also get a little angry when people on air all of a sudden start trying to tell you what they would do when they never lived that life, or they never understand the pressures that come along with performing at that level. And I had to make a decision that day. Am I going to engage in that tit for tat with Kevin Durant publicly? Or am I going to hold true to my principles and who I am and stand on them? And me standing on my principles was me not engaging. And me saying to the world, you know what? That's Kevin's opinion. We're going to talk about it. I wish him nothing but the best.
But I think it's a really important aspect, right? That, you guys are dealing with every day a social media set of platforms that is not a real world. Mm-hmm. But it actually influences how you feel, how you think, what you eat, how you dress, where you go, what pictures you take. And it can, if you're on it too much,
yes,
you end up being an avatar in your own world.
Factual.
Right? And so stepping away from that every once in a while, it's part of society. And so, but figuring out how to step away from that and realizing that, engaging with your friends in reality as opposed to virtual is a much healthier way to have an existence.
How do you think about, obviously, WellWithAll is going to become a really big thing. And you're in the process of writing a book too. Was I allowed to say that?
That was not public information until now. But thank you.
Lily, I'm sorry.
Coming soon.
We'll work on that next. It's a great little drop there. It's a great little drop. We just dropped it. Have you thought about as you build a brand and how the world engages and reacts to the brand, how that affects you and how you're going to be dealing with that as the brand gets bigger and bigger?
You know, and this is not some ploy, right? The reason why WellWithAll exists is to help people, right? It is an economic engine being built to help people. When you buy whatever we're selling, the healthy, incredible products that we're selling, at least 20% of the profits go into improving health equity for Black, brown, and underserved communities. And it's our intent to put $300 million into health equity over the next decade. So we're not just like giving away, socks or trinkets or whatever. Like, we are building something to help impact society. And so understanding that the reason why we're building this has nothing to do with me. It is about the cause. I'm not worried about my ego in this context. There's plenty of other reasons man, Kia keeps my ego tight daily.
You got the balance beam, yes.
No, it's love, and God has sent me her. But yeah, no, this is about something much bigger than me. And I think when you're living, and I've been in those moments in my life, early days of finance, when you start thinking, you have this success, and you start thinking it is about you. When you're living for just yourself, it's surface. For me, there's a higher calling. There's a greater purpose. There's a reason why I'm on this earth, and that drives me, right? Because at some point you'll make enough money. At some point you'll score enough points. At some point, whatever that first goal was will be achieved, and then what's next? And for me, I've determined that I thought that I was, going to be in finance for another 20 years, but, I was being prepared all that time to do this.
So your journey has led you to exactly where you're supposed to be. And there's power in believing that.
Indeed.
And owning that.
Indeed.
I know we had another question over here, I think.
So you guys were talking about mental health and doctors and just going and getting help. Can you explain some of these factors of mental health that we may not even realize, such as the isolation, just for some people that may be going through mental health and not even realize that they are facing these issues?
I'll tell you when I'm dealing with in real time. You ready? It's when sometimes you subconsciously do things and you don't recognize why you do them. So I grew up in a household, people see me talk for a living, so people think I can just address anything, right?
Yeah.
But I grew up in a household where there was domestic violence, and there was screaming, there was yelling. And so for me, in real time right now, relationship-wise, when tensions get tight, which they inevitably do in your relationship, right? In whatever relationship, there's gonna be moments of confrontation. Not becoming small. Not feeling like I have to revert back to that younger version of me, because I've seen where it culminates to and where it can go. Say, I just don't want to repeat that mistake, so I'm going to become small and I'm going to become mute and not say anything. Mm-hmm. And I think there was a habit in my life of doing that, and I think equipping yourselves or learning how to find the tools, and honestly, a lot of it is the verbiage. Like how you say things matter.
Yes.
They matter. So one of the tricks I learned to get myself out of my own way is by using the words I'm feeling. So, when my wife would say something to me like, well, boom, 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 you didn't do this. I'm like, okay, I'm feeling overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's your fault, but I'm trying to help you understand that I'm feeling this way, and I need you to help me work through that so we can get to the root and the cause of it. So it almost like it takes them out of the picture and it reverts back to how you're trying to process the information. And I found that to be helpful. And these little triggers that if you take the time, look, we put in work in your job, school. And as I've gotten older, I'm like, damn, I'm putting work in all these external things. I ain't putting work into me. Don't I deserve to have work put into me?
Yeah.
Because I'm giving everybody else. I'm giving my coach 8,000%. I'm giving my job, my boss 8,000% this business. When am I going to allocate that? And it's okay for me to be selfish because I need to work on me a little bit. And if you don't take the time to work on you a tad, then you don't know how you're triggered. You're just reactive.
Right. Yo, I was getting these massive migraine headaches. And I'm thinking I got a damn brain tumor or something. And I went to the doctor and he was like, so you got this massive, mental health issue at your house. You are running a hedge fund. You're on 4 boards. Yeah, this is stress. Right? And stress can show up in a whole variety of ways. Right? You're like, why is my leg hurting? I mean, it could be stress, right? And it can stay in your body if you look at the amount of time, right? That I had to figure out, even with crazy things going on in my life, that it was critical that I spent time focused on me, right? That it was critical for me to learn, to just meditate. Take a minute. We got Headspace as a partner. And they're giving away, opportunities for students to do some meditation like that. Just if it's 5 minutes a day, once a week or 3 times, like just spending some time for yourself, even if it's just a moment where you get up in the morning and, I have this thing on my bathroom wall, that our pastor gave, and it gives me a couple of, scriptures that I hit real quick, and it sets the tone for everything I do after that. Taking that moment for yourself, because if you feel like you're isolating yourself, if you feel like, you're alone and that the world feels distorted, or you feel like nobody understands you, or your heart is beating fast, or, those are all things that could be symptoms of stress. It could be anxiety. And it's worth, talking to a counselor here on campus. It's worth talking to your doctor to just understand, but pay attention to your body, because your body will tell you, what's going on. We oftentimes just ignore it.
Can I just one more thing real quick?
Yeah.
So I feel like being a former athlete, my whole life I've been told, don't show any weakness, no mercy. No weakness. It's funny, like that subconsciously has grown in my brain. Like when something would hurt, I ain't gonna show you it hurts. Like that's weakness, and I'm not gonna give you weakness to proud upon. I lost my mom a year ago, and my mom went through 2 kidney transplants, diverticulitis, congenital heart failure, and I think what I've learned is that sometimes it's okay to cry. It's actually like a healing thing. Like it doesn't mean that you aren't strong. It doesn't mean that you aren't resilient. And we talk about, resilience reimagined. Like sometimes it's letting your mind and your body and your soul mourn something. Because that is a loss. I've gained a lot. And I sometimes think as a Black male, like I used to really struggle with just crying.
Yeah. I lost my sister to cancer. She's 45. And I went to every chemotherapy with her.
That's hard, man.
I'm about to cry right now. I had to learn how to cry, right? Because, I was taught, men don't cry. But you need that to heal. Yo, how we doing on time? Because I know I see my whole crew, like everybody's running
They're
around in the
stressed out.
background. I'm causing them stress. I'll say a couple of quick things before we wrap up. One, we have been blessed over the last 20 years to be in a position to be philanthropists, my wife Kia and I, and one of the single best things that we've ever done is to fund the Martin Scholars, and the folks that are Martin Scholars now and that have graduated and gone on to do great things. We got some people in the building they're changing the world and they're doing amazing things. And I had lunch with a few of them yesterday, just on an impromptu basis. And from that conversation, we're doing work at WellWithAll throughout the community and so forth. But through that conversation, it was pressed upon me, and through this conversation as well, that we can do more here on campus at UNC Charlotte. And so WellWithAll is going to give $100,000 to improve and build on the capacity here from a mental health standpoint to help those students in need. And like you've heard me say before, like, we can't do everything, but we're going to do something. And brother, I just want to thank you for the vulnerability and the opportunity for us to just engage in this way and chip away at destigmatizing, mental health and the lessons that you've given. This has been an honor and a pleasure.
Say less, man.
Thank you. How do we exit? All right, I go this way.